They called him a legend, a mogul, the man who turned Bad Boy Records into an empire and made himself the face of hip-hop royalty. For decades, Sean Combs, known to the world as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or just Diddy, was untouchable. Fame, money, power, he had it all. Until now. Because what's unfolding behind courtroom doors and FBI files isn't just the fall of a man. It's the unraveling of a carefully constructed illusion. And the truth that's emerging is more disturbing than anyone imagined. Sean Combs didn't start out as a villain. Born in Harlem and raised in Mount Vernon, he began as an ambitious intern at Uptown Records in the early 90s. Within months, he rose through the ranks. By the time he was in his early 20s, he was already managing artists like Jodeci and Mary J. Blige. His gift for marketing, his eye for talent, and his relentless work ethic made him indispensable. But along with the genius came something darker, an explosive temper, a hunger for control, and a growing belief that the rules didn't apply to him. His ambition gave birth to Bad Boy Records in 1993. He signed Craig Mack, then the notorious B.I.G., and together they redefined East Coast hip-hop. Diddy wasn't just behind the scenes anymore. He stepped into the spotlight, winning awards, throwing lavish parties, and becoming one of the most powerful figures in music. But even at the height of his success, shadows followed him. In 1991, a charity basketball game he helped organize turned into a deadly stampede. 9 young people were killed. Diddy claimed he had nothing to do with it. Some witnesses said otherwise. Lawsuits were filed, settlements were made, no one was convicted, and life moved on. The years that followed were filled with more hits and more headlines. In 1999, a nightclub shooting in Manhattan made front-page news. 3 people were injured. Diddy fled the scene with then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez. After a high-speed chase, they were arrested. A gun was found in their vehicle. But in court, Diddy was acquitted. His driver later sued him, claiming he'd been paid off to take the fall. Once again, Diddy walked free. Behind the designer suits and billboard hits, a pattern was emerging. Outbursts, violence, intimidation, settlements, silence. But everything changed with Cassie Ventura. She was just 19 when she met Diddy. He signed her to a 10-album deal. They began a relationship, and from the outside, it looked like a dream come true. But behind closed doors, Cassie says it was a nightmare. In a lawsuit filed in 2023, she accused him of physical abuse, emotional manipulation, drug coercion, and forcing her into degrading sexual situations. She says he filmed her without her consent, isolated her from her family, and turned her into a prisoner of his wealth and influence. And she wasn't alone. After her story went public, more people came forward: women, men, former employees, artists, bodyguards, all painting a picture of a man who used power to dominate, intimidate, and destroy. Some claimed they had been beaten, others drugged, some even trafficked across state lines. Allegations surfaced about so-called freak-offs, drug-fueled sex parties in luxury hotels where participants weren't always willing. Some said they were paid to stay quiet. Others were too afraid to speak. Then the FBI got involved. In March 2024, federal agents raided Diddy's homes in Miami and Los Angeles. They seized hard drives, cell phones, weapons, and what they called critical digital evidence. Among the items discovered, large quantities of GHB, known as the date rape drug, hundreds of bottles of baby oil, firearms with scratched-off serial numbers. It wasn't just suspicious, it was potentially criminal. The case had now shifted from civil lawsuits to a federal criminal investigation. And this time, Diddy wasn't just accused of personal misconduct. He was being investigated for sex trafficking, obstruction of justice, and racketeering, charges typically used to dismantle criminal organizations, the kind of charges that can carry life sentences. And yet, through it all, one thing remained clear. Diddy was no longer in control. His empire, built over 3 decades, was collapsing. Sponsorships were pulled. Brands distanced themselves. Former collaborators went silent. Revolt TV, the media company he founded, quietly began removing traces of him from its public platforms. The man who once seemed larger than life now stood at the center of one of the most disturbing celebrity scandals in recent memory. And the world was watching. The floodgates had opened. Cassie's lawsuit was the first crack in the wall, but once it broke, the stories started pouring in. Dozens of people, some known, many anonymous, came forward, each with accounts that echoed the same chilling themes: coercion, violence, silence bought with fear or money. One former producer claimed he was forced to live under Diddy's roof for months, working around the clock without proper pay. He described the mansion as less of a home and more of a prison. He wasn't allowed to leave without permission. Family visits were discouraged, and he was watched constantly. Another victim said Diddy made her drink from a glass laced with ecstasy. She woke up bruised, naked, surrounded by people she didn't know. When she tried to speak out, she received messages reminding her who she was up against. A young man recalled being lured under the pretense of a business meeting, only to be sexually assaulted by a member of Diddy's inner circle. When he resisted, he was blacklisted from the industry. These weren't just isolated incidents. The patterns were consistent. Allegations of drugging, forced sex, cameras hidden in bedrooms, staff members told to look the other way, victims told to forget what they saw. Some stories stretched back to the 1990s. Others were recent. A few were tied to now-deceased figures, adding yet another layer of unease to the growing cloud surrounding Diddy's world. But what shocked investigators the most wasn't just the volume of testimonies, it was the level of coordination. There were claims of NDAs used to silence witnesses, private security with ties to local law enforcement, alleged bribes, strategic settlements, and whispers of celebrities being involved, either as passive bystanders or, more disturbingly, as participants. And yet, most of Hollywood remained silent. No public statements, no words of support, no condemnation, just silence. For the FBI, that silence raised even more questions. Why were so many people staying quiet? What did they know? What had they seen? In April 2024, the FBI took a bold step. They issued a formal public call for witnesses, encouraging anyone who had attended one of Diddy's infamous parties to come forward. They didn't just appeal to victims. They targeted assistants, bodyguards, business partners, even celebrities. Behind the scenes, agents worked to verify timelines, subpoena phone records, recover encrypted files, and trace payments made to alleged victims and collaborators. According to leaked documents, they recovered dozens of hard drives filled with years of digital evidence, photos, videos, emails. The most damning piece? A set of videos showing what appeared to be non-consensual acts, recorded without the knowledge of those involved. Some faces were blurred, others were unmistakably clear. But the question remained, would any of them testify? One woman who had previously worked as a stylist described a night where she witnessed a young woman, barely 18, being led into a room and locked inside with 2 men. She heard screaming. The next morning, the girl was gone. No one talked about it. Everyone acted like nothing had happened. Another former bodyguard said he was instructed to confiscate the phones of every guest at certain events. He was told to keep them safe, but now believes the goal was to prevent anyone from capturing what really went on. In the background, Diddy's legal team fought to control the narrative. They called the accusations fabricated, opportunistic, and racially motivated. They pointed to his philanthropy, his legacy, his impact on the industry. But the evidence kept stacking up. More lawsuits, more names, more stories. By late 2024, over a dozen civil complaints had been filed against him. Several included claims of sex trafficking, some involving minors. Others described violent outbursts, blackmail, and forced abortions. The allegations weren't just horrific, they were systemic. And while Diddy maintained his innocence, the pressure mounted. Major brands severed ties. His tequila empire collapsed. His media company distanced itself. A federal judge authorized the FBI to move forward with a full criminal indictment under the RICO Act, the same law used to dismantle mafia syndicates. By early 2025, the world was no longer asking if Diddy would fall. The only question was, how hard would the landing be? May 5th, 2025. The date that could redefine everything. That's when P. Diddy's federal trial officially begins. After months of silence, headlines, and speculation, it's time for the evidence to speak. And this time, the stakes couldn't be higher. The courtroom is expected to be one of the most watched in recent history. Federal prosecutors are coming in with hundreds of exhibits, video footage, financial records, sworn testimonies, and digital evidence recovered from Diddy's homes. They've spent more than a year building this case, quietly, strategically, and thoroughly. And now, it's all on the table. The charges against him include sex trafficking, obstruction of justice, illegal possession of firearms, witness intimidation, and racketeering under the RICO Act. Each of these alone could carry years, if not decades, of prison time. Together, they represent a potential life sentence. But this isn't just about one man. The prosecution believes Diddy didn't act alone. According to the FBI, he had help, a network, assistants, security officers, business partners, even industry executives who allegedly turned a blind eye or actively helped cover things up. That's what makes this trial so explosive. It's not just about P. Diddy. It's about an entire ecosystem that may have enabled his actions. And the silence from the industry is starting to feel deafening. Where are the A-list artists he collaborated with? The ones who praised him, toured with him, built empires alongside him? Why haven't they said a word? Some say they're afraid. Others may be complicit. Still others might simply be trying to protect their image, waiting to see which way the wind blows before picking a side. But public pressure is mounting. The victims are no longer anonymous faces. They're speaking out, boldly, visibly, and in detail. Their stories are raw, harrowing, and consistent, and whether or not a conviction comes quickly, Diddy's image is already shattered. He's no longer the untouchable mogul. He's a man in a federal detention center, fighting for his freedom. And while his lawyers are doing everything they can, filing motions, challenging evidence, attacking credibility, the prosecution seems ready for every angle. The most powerful piece of evidence may not be the hard drives or testimonies, but Diddy himself, his pattern of behavior, the history of settlements, the long trail of people who crossed his path and came away damaged. That's what the jury will be asked to see. Not just individual incidents, but a long, deliberate pattern of control, violence, and abuse. And here's the part that truly matters. This case isn't just about punishment. It's about exposure. It's about sending a message that power, money, and fame are not shields against justice. It's about holding someone accountable, not because he's famous, but because he's human. And no one is above the law. Still, some ask, what if he gets away again? What if his lawyers argue successfully that the stories are too old, the evidence too circumstantial, the witnesses too flawed? What if he walks free, like he has before? That possibility exists, and it terrifies those who've come forward. But this time, the public is watching, the court is federal, and the FBI doesn't play games. They've built a case with the intention of winning, not settling. Their 97% conviction rate isn't a statistic, it's a message. If they came for Diddy, they didn't come empty-handed. So now all eyes turn to the courtroom. The headlines will rage, the speculation will swirl, and day by day, we'll learn just how deep this story really goes. Because whether P. Diddy walks out a free man or spends the rest of his life behind bars, one thing is already certain: the myth is gone, the mask is off, and the empire of silence has finally started to fall. So, how does a man go from global icon to the centerpiece of a federal criminal case? Was it fame that corrupted him, or power that revealed who he always was? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. What we do know is this: for decades, Diddy built a kingdom, not just in music, but in culture. He shaped sound, set trends, and opened doors for countless artists. His influence is undeniable. But behind the music, there was something else, something darker. The allegations are no longer whispers. They are documents, court filings, sworn testimonies, physical evidence. They come from artists, assistants, romantic partners, business associates, and strangers who never wanted the spotlight, but had no choice when their lives were changed forever. Some were silenced with money, others with threats, many with fear. And yet, they came forward, not for clout, not for revenge, but because, for the first time, they believed the system might finally listen. That matters, because this story isn't just about a fallen star. It's about who we protect and who we ignore. It's about the cost of silence, the price of complicity, and what happens when people in power believe they're untouchable. For years, Diddy was the man no one could confront. Now, he's the man no one can defend. Whatever the verdict of this trial, one thing is clear: this moment, this reckoning, is bigger than him. It's about accountability, about justice, and about finally giving a voice to those who were forced into silence for far too long. We don't know what the jury will decide, but the world has already made up its mind. This was the fall of P. Diddy, and the echoes of it will be felt for years to come.